I think people come in, they're really excited, and then they get frustrated because they can't find the time. They can't get the engagement that they want, and they just get discouraged. And it's like, no, we're building something for years. And so I pitched that experiment. We did it in 6 months, and it worked. We got so much done, and nobody was like stressed out. It was amazing.
Welcome back to another episode of the ERG Movement Podcast, where we bring some amazing people on from the ERG space to give you some tips and pointers on how to take your ERG to the next level. Today, we have another amazing person. Kevin, give us a quick introduction of yourself, what part you play within the ERG space, and how you got into it.
Sure. So my name's Kevin Lawver. I'm a software engineer at Gusto. We do payroll, benefits, and HR for small and medium-sized businesses. They paid me to say that. And right now I am the co-lead of Gusto's 40 plus ERG. We call them Affinity Group, so I'll slip and say that a few times, but it's just an ERG. And I got into it, like I spent the first half of my career at a huge company, and then the second half at little tiny startups that were too small to have ERGs. Like there were 7 or 8, no more than 25, and that's just not enough. So when I got to Gusto, they talked about, like, in onboarding, they talk about affinity groups, and I was like, what? Wow, it's amazing. I joined a bunch of them, and I joined the families one because I was like, wait, I hadn't thought about families as like something to build groups around. And so it came time they needed new leadership, and someone poked and prodded me and made me volunteer to be the co-lead. And so I did that for almost 2 years. And then when we reorged all the ERGs at Gusto, and they asked me to lead 40 plus. So I've been doing that for a whole month and a half now.
Oh wow, you're an OG then with it by now. So with that, and it can apply to either Affinity Group, ERG, but I know you mentioned that you were with the Families one for longer. What was your favorite programming that came out of it?
We did a kind of special episode of one of our monthly meetings where we had a special education advocate come in and talk about, the IDEA Act and FERPA and all the acronyms that, IEP and 504, all the scary acronyms for parents, and sort of demystified it. And that's the one that really sticks out to me. Like, with the family stuff, you have a built-in draw of like, look at this cute thing that my kid did, or help, my kid won't sleep through the night, or they won't stop picking their nose or whatever. And that one was extremely practical, and everybody afterward, wow, that's really helpful. And so the recording, like, we post the link all the time. We go, hey, curious about IEPs, watch this.
I love that, especially when it's an event that can live on past just the live piece and where it's actually a resource to people, an ongoing resource to people. So yeah, I love that. Now that being said, being a resource to ERG members is one of the things that really I like to say is what helps to promote engagement. But curious if you have any other tips for ERG leaders in boosting their ERG's engagement.
I think it's really hard to sort of get inside the workday of everyone who's a part of your ERG. And like Gusto, it's a fairly large company. We've got, folks in customer service and engineering and design and product and sales and all over the place. And so not everyone has the sort of discretionary time budget that, say, engineers do. And so people can't get away from their jobs for an hour to come to a meeting. And so I think this is true for leadership positions and for engagement stuff, is give people bite-sized stuff that they can do in Slack or on their own time, and record everything and share the link. So it's there when people have the time to get to it, and then it's there for the future, years later. You'll have this whole content library that you can go back to and point people to.
That is gonna be like a sound bite for sure. Cause I feel like I scream that to the world and no one really hears it. But having that content library, recording everything, and even getting things for people to do in their own time, that's huge. Now, you mentioned earlier that something about a reorg when it comes to your ERGs. Can you speak more to that? What happened and why it needed to happen, or what the benefits are from it happening?
So it was an experiment. Well, that's how it started. Is so I got pulled in, asked to be one of the leads for Families with Gusto, and I was like, wow, this is a lot of work, and I have a real job that I have to do, and I just kept looking at how we were organizing them. We were organizing ERG leadership teams, which are all volunteer.
Hmm.
They're not a lot of people, and we actually serve hundreds of parents and uncles and aunts and grandparents and the whole thing. Families are huge. Um, and so I've done a lot of board work. So like I've been on a half a dozen nonprofit boards, and I was like, you know what? Nonprofit boards actually are pretty functional and they get a lot of work done and they're also all volunteer. So what if we tried that? And so I pitched moving us to a Quaker model, which instead of like you think of like Robert's Rules of Order and seconding motions and like no, it's not that. It's much more fluid. You go build consensus and like I was like we need more people and we also need more leadership opportunities that fit the time that people actually have available to give. And so like the clerks, which is what we call leads because Quakers, they have the most time commitment. It's like 10-15 hours a month. And then committee clerks, they lead like we have culture, community, career, and another C that I can't, they all start with C. I can't remember them. Um, they're like 5 hours a month. And then committee members, it's maybe an hour a month. And like someone in customer service, they can get an hour off to do this work and contribute and like put it in their annual review to go was a member of the culture committee on Families with Gusto and give me a thumbs up and let's go. So I pitched that experiment. We did it in families for 6 months and it worked. We got so much done and nobody was like stressed out. It was amazing. And they're like the we have a rise team, it's our DEI team, and they help us organize the ERG stuff. And they were like, okay, this is working too well. We're gonna, inflict this on everyone. And so we rolled it out over the fall and winter, and everybody kicked off with their new board, you know, in January, which is when I moved over to 40 plus.
Yeah, shout out to you for experimenting with it and actually, well, one, so this was like driven by you, the change and the new approach. Got you. So what does that look like to even pitch it to your fellow ERG leads to say, "Hey, we let's try something different because this isn't working." Sometimes that can hurt people's feelings, even just saying it like that too.
Yeah, I think if you for any big change like that, if you wrap it up as an experiment, it's a little easier to swallow. It was really, I was like, I don't want to inflict this on everyone. I just want to see if it'll work. And so I wrote basically a 1-page sales pitch explaining, what consensus-based decision making is, what Quaker boards are, you know, dispelled any rumors that it's, a religious thing. Like we made it secular, it's fine. And the benefits and why we should try it to see if it would work. And it took a little, like it didn't really take that much convincing because like we had some, it's the most common complaint among our leads in the past was I don't have enough time to do everything. Like I'm trying to lead this huge community and there's just the 2 or 3 of us, and some of them have been doing it for years. And I was like, you need help. So
Hmm.
let's get you some help and like organize it so this thing can last. And so it's not, you know, your group. So when you leave, it all falls apart, which is what had happened in the past. So it's like, let's try it and see what happens. Like the benefits were just to me clear from the beginning because I had just come off this board and it it was great. And it's been, there's been some growing pains. Like families is the second largest ERG at Gusto, and now I'm in 40 plus, which is this, I think, the smallest or second smallest.
Mm.
And so we don't have a full board. Like the families board was like 12, 15 people, between clerks and committee members. And so it was just da, 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 everything's done. And now there's three of us. And I'm like, well, what does a board look like of three people? That's more of a conspiracy than a board. So we're trying to figure out what that looks like, which is part of the fun of like moving to a new ERG, is figuring out how to grow it.
Right. And there's experimenting can be fun. It can be trial and error. And even if it didn't work, I mean, thankfully it did, but even if it didn't, it's like at least we tried something and we tested it. So um and I love that it was done within the ERG to start, and then you can expand it beyond.
Mm-hmm.
Um so just a lot of great learnings there. Curious, since you've been doing this for some time, what recommendations you would have for new ERG leaders, just in general.
Pace yourself, I think, is the biggest one. I think people come in, they're really excited, and then they get frustrated because they can't find the time. They can't get the engagement that they want. The first thing they tried didn't work and they just get discouraged. And it's like, no, we're building something for years. We're not building something for weeks or months. And that takes constant small amount, like whatever you can give, but like make it something that you can maintain over time. So pace yourself and don't burn yourself out. Like it's a volunteer thing. You should be getting something out of it, whether whether that's experience or friendship or learning stuff or whatever. Like have some goals for yourself and then pace yourself and keep track of the progress, because I think humans are really bad at like measuring progress over time without writing it down. So like write down all the little successes, because when stuff goes wrong, you can look back on them and go, yeah, I'm not a complete failure. I did three good things before. And so I'll do three good things later.
I love that. I love that. This has been another quick bite size episode of the ERG movement. Anything that you want to leave the people with, too? I know that you were just saying pace yourself, give yourself some credit, too. Anything else that you want to leave with the people around ERGs? Maybe even, I'll even ask it like this: what would you say to someone who is hesitant to join an ERG, doesn't know what an ERG is? Like, what's one thing that you think that people should know about ERGs?
The way I explain it to new people at Gusto is our affinity groups are like billboards on the highway. You know, like wait, imagine like first day of school in middle school. You're all these new people. You don't know who your people are. You have to like build your crew and build your friend group. Affinity groups are a way to short circuit all of that. It's like the place where you are most likely to find your people, no matter what that group is. So dive in, participate, have fun, like, and serve. Like it's really just so rewarding to be able to play. This is going to sound weird, but one of the great things about being an ERG leader is that you get to play with the rest of the organization. You get to try and push policy to help the people that you represent. You are representing the people in your ERG. And so, like, push for things, try to make big changes because you can. And, like, no one can really stop you from asking for stuff. So ask
Right.
for big stuff. Go do it. It's so rewarding and fun.
I could not agree more. Well, just so you all know, this conversation doesn't have to end here. If you want to connect with Kevin, LinkedIn, I'm guessing, will be the place of choice. I'll make sure that it's included in the description below. Again, it's been another amazing episode of the ERG Movement Podcast, and we'll see you all on the next one.
Thanks. This was fun.